The journey into the heart of the Swiss Alps begins long before one reaches the valley floor. As the train winds its way from Interlaken, the landscape undergoes a violent transformation. The rolling hills and wide lakes of the lowlands suddenly constrict. The horizon disappears, replaced by colossal walls of grey limestone that seem to lean over the traveler. This is the entrance to the Lauterbrunnen Valley, a place where the geography of the earth takes a turn toward the impossible. To look up is to feel a sense of vertigo. To look down is to see an emerald green ribbon of meadow that seems far too narrow to support the weight of the mountains above. This is a U-shaped glacial valley, one of the deepest in the world, and it serves as a portal into a realm where the elements of stone and water have been engaged in a 1,000-year war. As the morning mist lifts, the true character of the valley reveals itself. It is not merely a canyon, it is a cathedral of nature. The air here is different, heavy with the scent of pine and the cool, damp breath of 72 waterfalls. Each of these falls has its own voice, from the thunderous roar of the hidden Trümmelbach to the ghostly whisper of the Staubach. For the locals, this sound is the background radiation of their lives, a constant reminder that they live in a landscape that is very much alive. The sheer scale of the verticality defines everything here. In most places, the sky is a vast dome. In Lauterbrunnen, the sky is a narrow strip of blue, framed by the jagged edges of the Eiger, Mönch, and Jungfrau. This is the starting point of our exploration, a descent into the depths and an ascent into the legends of the Bernese Oberland. To understand why Lauterbrunnen looks the way it does, we must travel back 10,000 years to the height of the last ice age. At that time, the entire valley was choked by a massive glacier, a slow-moving river of ice that exerted a pressure so immense it is difficult for the human mind to conceive. As the glacier flowed, it didn't just move through the valley, it reconstructed it. While rivers create V-shaped valleys through slow erosion, glaciers act like giant plains, smoothing and scouring the rock into a perfect U-shape. The limestone of the Lauterbrunnen walls was polished by the grit and stones trapped beneath the ice, creating the nearly vertical cliffs that draw millions of visitors today. When the climate began to warm and the ice retreated, it left behind a geological masterpiece. The flat valley floor, composed of glacial till and alluvial deposits, became a fertile haven, while the side valleys were left hanging high above the main floor. These hanging valleys are the reason for the region's famous waterfalls. Streams that once flowed gently toward the center of the valley suddenly found themselves ending in mid-air, forced to leap off the cliffs into the void below. This geological trauma created the aesthetic beauty we see today. The rock itself tells a story of tectonic shifts. The limestone was once at the bottom of a prehistoric sea, pushed upward by the collision of the African and Eurasian plates. Today, fossils of sea creatures can still be found high on the peaks of the Eiger, a silent testament to the Earth's capacity for radical change. The name Lauterbrunnen means many fountains, and it is no exaggeration. The 72 waterfalls of the valley are the lifeblood of the ecosystem. The most famous, the Staubach Falls, is a landmark of the Romantic era. Dropping nearly 300 meters from a jutting rock face, the water often never reaches the ground as a liquid stream. Instead, it is caught by the updrafts and shattered into a fine spray, or dust, which gives the falls its name. In the 18th and 19th centuries, this site became a pilgrimage for poets and thinkers. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe upon seeing the Staubach in 1779, was moved to write his Song of the Spirits over the Waters, comparing the soul of man to the falling water, descending from heaven, rising again in mist, and eternally returning to the earth. However, if the Staubach is the soul of the valley, the Trümmelbach Falls are its fury. Hidden deep within the mountain, these falls are unique in Europe. They are the only subterranean, glacial waterfalls that are accessible by a tunnel lift. Here, the meltwater from the Eiger, Munch, and Jungfrau glaciers, up to 20,000 liters per second, thunders through a series of corkscrew canyons carved into the heart of the rock. The sound inside is deafening, a physical vibration that rattles the chest. The water carries with it tons of glacial flour, fine rock dust that gives the river its milky, opaque color. To stand inside the mountain at Trümmelbach is to witness the raw, mechanical power of erosion in real time. It is a reminder that the valley is not finished. It is still being carved, still being deepened, one drop of water at a time. While the village of Lauterbrunnen sits in the shadows of the valley floor, its sisters, Wengen and Muren, occupy the sunny balconies of the hanging valleys. These villages represent a different way of alpine life. Wengen, perched on the eastern slope, is a sun-drenched plateau that faces the Jungfrau. For over a century, it has been a car-free sanctuary, accessible only by the Wengenalp Railway. The pace of life here is dictated by the seasons. In winter, it becomes a hub for world-class skiing, hosting the legendary Lauterbrunnen race, the longest downhill run in the World Cup circuit. In summer, the ski runs transform into lush pastures where the famous Simmental cows graze, their bells creating a rhythmic melody that carries across the valley. Across the abyss, on the western side lies Muren. If Wengen feels like a grand resort, Muren feels like an outpost on the edge of the world. It was originally settled by the Walser people, a hardy group of migrants who moved from the Valais region in the 13th century. They brought with them a unique dialect and a tradition of timber construction that still defines the village's aesthetic. From Muren, the view of the Big Three, the Eiger, Munch, and Jungfrau, is so close it feels as though you could reach out and touch the glaciers. The village is the gateway to the Schildhorn Peak, made famous by the James Bond film On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The juxtaposition of 13th century farming traditions with 20th century cinematic fame is a hallmark of the region's ability to bridge the gap between the ancient and the modern. Perhaps the most enduring cultural legacy of Lauterbrunnen is its influence on modern mythology. In 1911, a 19-year-old J.R.R. Tolkien hiked through the Bernese Oberland. He walked from Interlaken to Lauterbrunnen and then up to Muren. The landscape of the deep cloven valley, with its sheer cliffs and silver threads of water, stayed with him for decades. When he came to write The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, Lauterbrunnen became the physical blueprint for Rivendell, the refuge of the elves. He described Rivendell as a hidden valley of steep sides, waterfalls and pine trees, a place of peace on the edge of the wild. The parallels are unmistakable. The Bruinen River in Tolkien's world mirrors the Lütschine that flows through Lauterbrunnen. The snowy peaks that loom over the elven sanctuary are the literary shadows of the Jungfrau and the Eiger. For millions of readers, Lauterbrunnen is a place they have already visited in their imagination. This connection has turned the valley into a place of pilgrimage for those seeking a touch of the sublime. That specific blend of beauty and awe that makes one feel the presence of something greater than themselves. To walk the valley floor in the evening light is to understand why Tolkien chose this place as the last homely house east of the sea. It feels protected, ancient, and infused with a quiet magic. It is easy to look at Lauterbrunnen today and see only a postcard-perfect paradise. However, the history of this valley is one of extreme struggle and survival. For the early settlers, the valley was a harsh and unforgiving environment. The same cliffs that we admire today were obstacles that cut off sunlight for months at a time. In the winter, the Schattenhalb, the shadow side of the valley, would receive no direct sun from October to March. This led to a life of extreme isolation and poverty. The soil on the valley floor was often too marshy for crops, forcing farmers to utilize the steep Alps, the high mountain pastures. The life of a mountain farmer involved transhumance, the seasonal movement of livestock. Every spring, families would drive their cattle up treacherous paths to the high meadows, living in small stone huts for the summer to produce cheese, which was one of the few commodities they could trade. The risk of avalanches and rockfalls was a daily reality. Local folklore is filled with stories of berggeister, mountain spirits, and demons who were blamed for the sudden disasters that could wipe out a family's livelihood in seconds. The dark, larchwood houses, with their small windows and heavy stone roofs, were designed not for beauty, but as fortresses against the weight of the snow and the violence of the föhn wind, a warm, dry wind that can trigger rapid thaws and dangerous floods. In the modern era, the valley's verticality has attracted a new kind of resident, the adrenaline seeker. Lauterbrunnen is widely considered the base jumping capital of the world. The sheer limestone walls provide exit points that are almost perfect for the sport. On any given day in the summer, one can look up and see colorful wingsuits gliding through the air, looking like giant birds against the gray rock. These jumpers come from all over the globe to test themselves against the valley's cliffs. But this modern obsession comes with a heavy price. The valley has witnessed hundreds of fatalities since the sport began to gain popularity. There is a small cemetery in the village where many of these jumpers are buried. Young men and women who came for the thrill and stayed forever. The local community has a complex relationship with this. On one hand, the jumpers bring a vibrant, youthful energy to the valley. On the other, the sound of rescue helicopters is a somber reminder of the mountain's indifference to human life. For the base jumpers, Lauterbrunnen is the ultimate frontier, a place where the boundary between life and death is as thin as the fabric of a parachute. No discussion of Lauterbrunnen is complete without the story of the Jungfrau Railway, one of the greatest engineering feats in human history. At the end of the 19th century, Adolf Goerzeler had a vision that seemed insane: to build a railway to the summit of the Jungfrau. He sat on a ridge and sketched a line that would tunnel through the Eiger and Monch mountains, emerging at the Jungfrau Joch, the saddle between the peaks. Construction began in 1896 and took 16 years. Thousands of workers, mostly from Italy, labored in brutal conditions, blasting through solid granite while living in high-altitude camps. They faced altitude sickness, sub-zero temperatures, and the constant threat of explosions. When the line finally opened in 1912, it transformed the region. Today, the train still climbs the steep grade, entering a tunnel that runs for 7 kilometers inside the mountain. There are windows cut into the north face of the Eiger, allowing passengers to look out at the terrifying Eigerwand, the north face that has claimed the lives of so many climbers. Reaching the Jungfraujoch at 3,454 meters is a surreal experience. You step out of a train and onto a glacier. This top of Europe station has made the high alpine world accessible to everyone, not just elite climbers, forever changing the way we interact with the peaks. While the railway tunnels through its heart, the Eiger's north face, the Eiger Nordwand, remains a symbol of the unattainable. Known as the Murder Wall, it is a 1,800-meter vertical expanse of rock and ice that was considered the last problem of the Alps. It wasn't successfully climbed until 1938. The history of the Eiger is intertwined with the history of Lauterbrunnen. The village often served as the staging ground for these dramatic attempts. In the 1930s, crowds of tourists would gather on the terraces of Kleine Scheidegg, using telescopes to watch climbers struggle on the wall above. Many of these attempts ended in tragedy, most notably the 1936 attempt by Toni Kurz and Andreas Hinterstoicer. Kurz died just meters away from rescuers, suspended on a rope, unable to pass a knot through his carabiner. His last words, "I can do no more," have become part of alpine legend. The Eiger continues to haunt the valley, a dark triangular shadow that looms over the northeastern end, reminding everyone that despite our trains and hotels, the high mountains remain a wilderness that cannot be tamed. From the Sphinx Observatory at the Jungfraujoch, one can see the beginning of the Great Aletsch Glacier. It is a river of ice 23 kilometers long, containing billions of tons of water. It is the largest glacier in the Alps and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. However, the glacier is also a visible clock of the changing climate. In the last century, the Aletsch has retreated by over 3 kilometers. For the people of Lauterbrunnen, this is not a political debate. It is a visible reality. The glaciers are thinning, and as they do, the mountains lose their structural integrity. The permafrost, the ice glue that holds the rock faces together, is melting. This has led to an increase in rock falls and landslides. The waterfalls, which depend on glacial melt, are becoming more unpredictable. The local community is now faced with a new challenge: how to preserve their way of life in a landscape that is melting away. They are implementing sustainable tourism measures and investing in green energy, but the scale of the change is global. The valley that was shaped by ice is now being reshaped by its absence. Despite the influx of millions of tourists and the rise of extreme sports, the core of Lauterbrunnen remains rooted in Swiss tradition. The autumn Chestelet, cheese sharing, is still one of the most important days of the year. This is when the cheese produced in the high Alps during the summer is brought down and divided among the farmers according to the milk production of their cows. It is a festival of music, traditional dress, and community pride. The sound of the alphorn still echoes through the valley at sunset. This long wooden instrument was originally used by shepherds to communicate across valleys and to calm the cattle. Its deep, haunting tones seem to match the scale of the mountains. Today, you might see a farmer checking his cows with a drone, or a mountain hut that uses high-speed satellite internet. But the underlying values of hard work and respect for nature remain. The people of Lauterbrunnen have mastered the art of soft tourism, allowing the world to see their home without destroying the very things that make it special. As the sun begins to set over the Lauterbrunnen Valley, a phenomenon known as the alpenglow occurs. The sun has already dipped below the horizon for the valley floor, leaving it in a deep, cool blue shadow. But the highest peaks, the Jungfrau and the Silberhorn, remain illuminated. They turn a brilliant fiery orange, then a soft ethereal pink. It is a moment of profound beauty that silences even the most hurried tourist. In this light, the valley feels like a bridge between worlds. It is a bridge between the geological past and the digital present. It is a bridge between the physical reality of a Swiss farming village and the fantasy worlds of Tolkien. Lauterbrunnen is a reminder that there are still places on Earth that can make us feel small in the best possible way. It teaches us that beauty is often found in the extremes, between the vertical and the horizontal, the light and the shadow, the roar of the water and the silence of the snow. As the stars begin to appear in the narrow strip of sky above, the 72 waterfalls continue their eternal descent, a liquid curtain falling over the most beautiful valley in the world.